Hello, today we're in Agawam, Massachusetts, at an old cemetery, the second oldest cemetery, and
Good.
the second oldest cemetery in Agawam itself. And in this cemetery called the Old Feeding Hills Cemetery, also called the South Westfield Street Cemetery, there's a lot of very old stones and no modern stone, and nothing after about 1800s or so, 1880s or so. And it might have started in 1750. Right, there might have been a church chapel nearby. There usually is. There's a modern one up the hill by the name of Hope Community Church. The cemetery behind it is on a north-south axis. Now, cemetery stones should be lined up on the very old ones so that they point east-west axis. And the far side does, but the near side does not. Okay, so anything you want to know about that?
So, how are the stones arranged?
Yeah, they're arranged very strangely. Like half of them are arranged in the correct direction, but the inscription in the wrong direction. And the other half, they're not quite right. And I'll tell you about that changeover point. Okay, what might have happened here. And there's a chapel up the hill. There might have been an old chapel, probably right in this green spot right here. Now you can't park inside the cemetery or on either side of the street because it's a busy highway, Route 57. You can hear all those cars, but you can park on the road up to the modern church and just walk about 150 feet over to the entrance of the cemetery itself. So there's the gates, and here's the sign saying Old Feeding Hills Cemetery. $17.50. Okay, and there's a retaining wall over here. Now the stones, you can see some very old stones here around 1830s or so. And as we walk back, you'll start to see 1870, 1860, 1830. Here's 1814. Now, stones that were before the 1850s or so should be pointing towards the west. And every stone in this half of the cemetery is pointing towards the east. These old stones should be pointing towards the west. So let's see if we can find some. No. Even these worn out ones, no. So what happened was a superintendent at some point, probably around 1880 to 1900, when burials stopped in the cemetery, probably shifted all the stones around so that the inscription of the headstone points towards the east. So these are shifted 180 degrees around. Okay, now there's very few footstones too. You should be seeing footstones paired up with headstones, such that the footstones would be uphill or towards the west itself, and they're not. There's no, in this half of the cemetery at least, there's no footstones around. Okay, so those are gone too, but at least they're on the right axis, the east-west axis, but shifted around and footstones are gone. And there's quite a few stones here. Now, since this is the back of the cemetery, the very back of the cemetery is reserved for special burials, such as a potter's field. And the potter's field is usually put in the back right corner, so that's over here. And then towards the back east, you put other special examples. When you find stones way off from any other stone, that usually means a suicide. Right, this one's hard to read, but it's so far away from the other, it's probably a suicide victim. 1827. Okay, now you have a gap in the middle separating the cemetery in half. Now something very strange has happened. The other side of the cemetery with still very, very old stones, now lies on a different axis. It lies on a north-south axis, which for very old stones is extremely unusual, and there's something wrong. All right, this one says in memory of William McIntyre, Major under General Pepperell at the reduction of Cape Breton, 1744. Right, and he died December, I can't read on the bottom. All right, and this is Mr. William McIntyre, again, 1777. All right, now these old stones should be pointing towards the inscription, pointing towards the west. And in fact, they're pointing towards the south. So someone has taken the stones and shifted them here by 90 degrees. At least these very old ones here. So both sides of the cemetery have been shifted around, and they've been shifted in different directions. So the superintendent, when trying to beautify the cemetery at some point, decided to shift the stones around to make them face this side into the interior grass roadway, right? While on the other side, he made them spin around 180 degrees and face towards the road. All right, and this is the Phelan gravestone, and this is the memory of Lieutenant Joseph Phelan, who died 27th of November, 1800. And then it's his consort, which means his wife. Okay, now as we go back, we get towards more modern stones. Now, any stone after about 1850, they usually don't care about what directions the inscription gravestone would be facing. Right, but these before should face in a set direction, and they don't. Okay, this one had the wind come up into the middle, as typically it does, and it started wearing out the middle. The outsides was protected by wind coming from the other direction, but the middle was not protected because the wind could not reach to push back against the sand that was blown from the other direction towards the stone, and it wears out the middle. And you always see this pattern on these old gravestones if they start to wear out. Okay, and that one says Mrs. Rachel Morley, relic of Abel Morley. That means she's a widow of. And that's an honorary way of doing it, 1798. And these are probably children here. Now, what's this in the back? Well, back right of a cemetery is usually where the potter's field is. So these were the paupers would be buried. That's why it's empty. It's really not empty. It's actually filled with burials, but no stones, because these were the very poor people that the family could not afford to have them be buried on their own. So the town of Agawam at that point had to do it. Okay? So I hope you learned something. This is an old Phelan Hills Cemetery. Someday I'll give a walking tour around this cemetery for you. And I'll give you one last panoramic. Thank you.